Of mine. We met about 30 years ago when I first moved to Hong Kong, and we were both teaching at the City University School of Law. It was a very exciting time because it was a new school of law, and Hong Kong was in that very interesting transition period. It was still a British colony, but it was preparing to become a special administrative region of China. And Susan really had her eye on the future because she was studying China from the start, and she published while we were at CityU the first comprehensive study of the operation of the Supreme People's Court. And she's been an expert on this topic for a very long time. After she left City University, she had a career quite separate from academia. She put in more than 20 years in legal practice at Freshfields and other firms. She also had a career in legal publishing, and I understand even briefly as a securities regulator. That was something I didn't know about until she sent me her updated bio. So that must have been very interesting. And now she is an academic once again. She's still based in Hong Kong, but she is a distinguished scholar in residence at the School of Transnational Law of Peking University, which is based in Shenzhen, just north of Hong Kong. And she's also a member of the expert committee of the China International Criminal Court. And she regularly, pardon?
Commercial court.
Yes, I thought I said that. Didn't I say that? Commercial
No,
court.
criminal.
Oh, China International Commercial Court.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a Freudian slip. And she publishes research regularly on the Supreme People's Court and Chinese judicial reforms. And you can find a good deal of this research on her blog, which many of you may want to consult after this talk. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Susan, and thank you so much for enlightening our audience and our students. And we really look forward to your presentation and to the Q&A.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you. Hold on, share. So you can see my PowerPoints, right? Yeah. I should say that nothing I say should be attributed to the China International Commercial Court or the Supreme People's Court. Yeah, for the avoidance of doubt. Okay, so here's my roadmap. I'm trying to, I probably overstuffed this presentation because I've been researching this topic for quite a while. So, and I wrote this overly long article that even one of my friends who's fascinated with this topic said it's too much. So yeah, so this is a bit of the research. Yeah. So yeah, so a quick why is the Supreme People's Court, the SPC, serving the Belt and Road? A bit of background on the SPC, because I figure most people don't know too much about it. How the SPC provides its services, the scope of them, how the SPC facilitates Belt and Road related dispute resolution, and then other Belt and Road related matters that the SPC is facilitating. And then the last part will be, you know, my look into my crystal ball. Okay, so why is the Supreme People's Court serving the Belt and Road? I have two quotes from well, senior people at the Supreme People's Court. So this is current Supreme People's Court Vice President Yang Wanming. So he said, I think last year, wherever the national strategy is deployed, the judicial services and safeguards of the people's courts will be there. So that is to say, unlike Supreme Courts in other jurisdictions, the Supreme People's Court supports the policies of, you know, the Chinese Communist Party. So wherever they're focusing national strategies, the people's courts will be there. They will provide measures to support whatever the the party is doing. And this gentleman, so this is, he was then Judge Lo Dongchuan, then head of the part of the Supreme People's Court responsible for foreign related matters. He is now a senior official in Fujian province. And actually his quote is I mean, it's hard to understand, hard for us non-mainland people to understand, but so his quote is, "The courts are the indispensably important force for ensuring the construction of the Belt and Road." I mean, it's hard, you'll see what he means. So there's a tremendous truth inside this phrase, which you'll see in the course of my presentation. So it's a different concept of a court from some other jurisdictions. Okay, so a quick introduction to the Supreme People's Court. So this is the main building. You can't just, unlike for example, the US Supreme Court, where I think you can, line up and go in. So for the Supreme People's Court, you have to go into that little side booth there and show your passport or ID card, et cetera, et cetera. You need to be cleared to go inside. So I've been inside a number of times, but it's not that I can freely go in there. So I think the kind of access says something. And then for some reason they don't like, I took this photo from South China Morning Post article, but every time I've wanted to take this photo on the street, like the armed police that are patrolling the street, say like no photos. I'm not sure why. Okay, so I have 2 slides on the Supreme People's Court in the party government structure. So you can see the Supreme People's Court is down here. Yes, so under the Chinese Constitution, it's responsible and is supervised by the National People's Congress. Yes, so it and the Supreme People's Procuratorate, which is like the prosecutor's office, but has additional powers. But that is to say, it's not a the Supreme People's Court has a kind of subsidiary role as compared to some of the other. I think the next slide will perhaps make this clearer. Yeah, so this is, so China has bureaucratic ranks. So at the full state ranking, so the Central Committee, Central Military Commission, State Council, etc. So so one level down is the Central Disciplinary Inspection Commission. They're the ones that are always taking people, the corrupt officials into custody. They're actually technically at the same level, but actually higher because there's an inspector from this commission stationed at the Supreme People's Court, but not the other way around. And I mean, the same is true. There's also one of these inspectors in the Supreme People's Procuratorate as well. So so party departments, ministries, commissions, etc., are below that. And then, so this ranking applies to both institutions and officials. So that means that Zhou Cheng, the current president of the Supreme People's Court, so he has the rank, quasi-state ranking, and then people, so people under him, departments, the or divisions of the Supreme People's Court would have this, you know, kind of ministry level ranking. Yeah, so this is a quick overview of the internal organization of the Supreme People's Court. You know, it's a huge bureaucracy. So the blue, so the ones in blue are the trial divisions. Yeah, so case filing, there are 5 criminal adjudication or criminal trial tribunals. Those do, they're responsible for reviewing death penalty decisions, plus responsible for different types of crimes. So as I'll explain, the Supreme People's Court does policy and quasi legislation. So that's the 5 criminal tribunals. So there are 4 civil adjudication or civil trial divisions. So one is what they call traditional civil, so family law, real estate. Let me think what else is in there. Labor. 2 is commercial matters. 3 is IP. 4 is the so commercial, so cross-border or commercial issues. There's one on environment, administrative, then trial supervision is a procedure where cases that are filed can be reopened. State compensation is compensation for people who've been wronged by the state, and then there's enforcement. Then you'll see the green ones are the kind of administration or quasi-administrative parts of the Supreme People's Court. Research office is an odd office because it does substantive work, not just administrative work, and is responsible for coordinating judicial interpretations, and works on a lot of them themselves. You'll see that the political department is analogous to the personnel. You have the retired, so like other bureaucracies, there's a retired cadres bureau. The Bureau of International Cooperation is like the Foreign Affairs Bureau. So judges going out or any kind of international cooperation going in or out, it needs to go through them. Yeah, and then there are 6 circuit courts. Those are new since the 2015 judicial reforms. Yeah, there's no, this chart doesn't mention the relatively newly established Supreme People's Court IP Court, and the China International Commercial Court is linked to the number 4 civil tribunal. Yeah, so this is another slide showing kind of the relationship between the Supreme People's Court and the lower courts. Yes, so there are like 31 provincial level higher people's courts, then many intermediate courts. Then there's some of these specialized courts, maritime, IP, railroad. There's a whole separate military court system, kind of separate from these other, the civilian system. And yeah, then I think over 3,000 primary level courts. Okay, so I thought it's good to show some photos of the people in the Supreme People's Court. These are the senior people. So Joe Chang there at the top. Yeah, so these are the senior people. They will sit as the judicial committee to approve certain matters, certain policies. So under the Chinese, under court legislation, they have special authority that ordinary judges in the Supreme People's Court don't have. So these documents that I'll talk about have been approved by these people or their predecessors. Yeah, so these are the judges currently on the Supreme People's Court. So Judge Wang Shumei on the far, so on my far left on the top. So she's head of the number 4 Civil Division. Yeah, so Gao Xiaoli, she's now head of the International Cooperation Bureau. She'd been deputy head of the number 4 Civil Division. So many of these people had studied overseas or including in Hong Kong. So a lot of these people would have input into some of the documents that I'm going to talk about. Okay, so a bit further background on the cases in the Chinese courts. So this is from this year's Supreme People's Court report to the National People's Congress. This is the number of cases accepted by the Chinese courts. And so in 2020, it was about, so close to 31 million cases. So most of them, civil or commercial, not criminal. Let me see. So from the same report, so the national, so first instance foreign related cases in the Chinese court. So this not including Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. So that, which would generally be about the same number. So you'd have like 31 million versus 22, or even adding the Hong Kong, et cetera, cases, 44,000 cases. So the foreign related cases are a teeny tiny percentage of the cases in the Chinese courts. So, but why are these tiny number of cases important? So the answer is, in Zhou Enlai's quotation, why should in foreign affairs there are no small matters. This is then Justice Pei Xianding. He recently retired. So he was talking about foreign related criminal matters. He said the first principle is to strengthen your assessment of the overall situation. That means the political, do a political assessment. It is clear in foreign affairs, there are no small matters. It's foreign affairs or involve matters, foreign relations, and therefore none of them are, therefore they're significant. So a quick summary of the courts in the Chinese system. It's not a separation of power system, but each fulfills its own function system. More important to the party leadership in the Xi Jinping new era. So there've been many reforms in the new era. So I've mentioned some, I'll mention more. And I've written about more in my blog. The court system there's one system, it's not a state and federal, it's a unitary system, but the funding is local, although there've been funding changes under the judicial reforms. Okay, so finally, so how does the Supreme People's Court provide its services? And that's what this idea of services, I think, also resonates with the idea of, serve the people, that kind of thing. Anyway, so how does the Supreme People's Court provide services? it's through what it does. So a bit of it is providing political guidance. So creating judicial policy, which is something I'll be talking about. So I'll be talking about judicial policy in the rest of the presentation. So hearing cases, creating quasi legislation called judicial interpretations, suffragist, guiding the lower courts, which is partially incorporated in the judicial policy, administering the lower courts, cooperating with other institutions. And so in the Belt and Road situation, promoting the soft power of Chinese law and the Chinese courts. Okay, so focusing first on the judicial policy. So the Chinese court, so Supreme Appeals Court issues that judicial policy in policy documents. They were called two different things in Chinese, like a judicial policy document or judicial guidance document, but they're very, very important in guiding the Chinese courts. So there've been, so they're called, so the most important ones are called opinions. So why through policy, why documents? These quotations are from a professor, I think, of law and politics at the Central Party School. In the actual political life of China, rule by document is an objective fact. So quick responses by documents can address problems that arise in the economy and society. So drafting and promulgating laws and regulations is slow. So to promote party policy, documents are quicker. This is a list of other policies the Supreme Appeals Court serves through policy documents. Xiong'an, which is this new area in Hebei province, Xi Jinping is promoting. There's this Beijing development zone. So Yellow River, ecological soils. So and there's been another recent one on the environment, rural revitalization. So there's Belt and Road 1, Belt and Road 2, open economy. Those three are the ones I'll be talking about. Shenzhen is a model zone. So and then there's a lot, there are sometimes links among them. So these are the principal Belt and Road related documents. So this 2015 one on, so what I call Belt and Road 1, several opinions on providing judicial services and safeguards for the construction of the Belt and Road by People's Courts. December 2019, on for providing further judicial services and guarantees or safeguards. And this September 2020 guiding opinions on serving and guaranteeing the further opening up to the outside world. So I think you can get a sense from the name of the last one that the scope of these documents is larger than just the Belt and Road itself. So what is the scope? So the scope of these services and safeguards policy documents incorporates both Belt and Road and non-Belt and Road related issues, but linked to the policies in the Belt and Road documents. And then linked to the party and government's Belt and Road policies and other related policies. And as I'll explain later. So what areas of law does it cover? So dispute resolution, civil procedure, maritime civil procedure, dispute resolution, arbitration, litigation, mediation, so new institutions such as the China International Commercial Court, private international law, conflicts of law, those issues. There's some public international law issues, quite a bit on substantive law. And yes, so intellectual property, although important, it's mostly covered by other Supreme Court policy documents focused on intellectual property. Yeah, and then now more also finance and bankruptcy. And this is especially bankruptcy is a new hot issue. And then finally, criminal law and criminal procedure. But I'm gonna sort of focus on the dispute resolution side. Yeah, so it's just a roadmap reminder. So yeah, so I'll focus on dispute resolution and some of the other issues and what, in the crystal ball gazing. Okay, yeah, so how does the Supreme People's Court facilitate Belt and Road dispute resolution? In these documents, there are provisions on arbitration, on litigation, and what is called one-stop dispute resolution. So some measures are Belt and Road specific, and many are not. So this is an area where the Supreme People's Court has a lot more flexibility to determine its own policies than in the criminal law, where there are, so the party has, kind of policy groups where policy needs to be coordinated. And so therefore the Supreme People's Court has less flexibility to do, to set its own policy. So the Supreme People's Court uses the flexibility it has within the system to issue judicial policy and what are called judicial interpretations, hear cases, and cooperate with other institutions where policies it determines are suitable, and serve the goal of facilitating the Belt and Road and other, so guide the lower courts and other things that it does to promote the development of the Chinese court system. So I'll focus first on arbitration, right? Because it's critically important for dispute resolution, in China-related deals. So including, especially, this is the traditional way from, I was involved in this stuff from like 1994, but so China signed the New York Convention back in 1987, maybe. Yeah, because it knew that to attract foreign investment, they needed to be able to enforce Chinese arbitral awards needed to be enforced overseas and vice versa. So arbitration is the usual way of resolving China-related disputes. I mean, and there's a bigger overall policy now in the Belt and Road, under Xi Jinping, of wanting China to become a center for arbitration. Yes, so Belt and Road, and plus many Chinese companies going abroad to do business means many more cross-border disputes resolved by arbitration. Some in China, quite a bit abroad. It's very difficult to get one's hands on statistics. But if you look at ICC, Hong Kong, the statistics from, say, ICC, Hong Kong International Arbitration Center, let me see, Singapore International Arbitration Center, you'll see more and more China-related disputes, especially big deals, you know, in these fora. Okay, I mean, why am I talking about the Supreme People's Court? Is because the Supreme People's Court has a body of judicial interpretations, which are quasi-legislation, filling in the huge gaps in the Chinese arbitration law. So relating to judicial review of arbitration. And in the 90s, the Supreme People's Court set up a special prior review mechanism of lower court, well, especially domestic, but certain, but in the first place, it was foreign related arbitration rulings. So that if a local court wants to rule against enforcement of a foreign arbitral award, that needs to be reported level by level up to the Supreme People's Court. So from this, you can see, I guess, a couple of things. You can see that the administrative way the Chinese court system operates. Second, the idea is to so prevent local courts from protecting their own local companies from having foreign arbitral awards enforced against them. Yeah, so the idea is for China to be arbitration friendly and do its part in implementing its obligations under the New York Convention. Okay, so yes, so let's say statistics. Yeah, so arbitration review cases arise in the local and the maritime courts. Yeah, so for the first time, the Supreme People's Court issued, so in 2019, they issued, no, in 2020, they issued statistics related to 2019. So there were over 20,000 of these judicial review of arbitration cases. A very small number of those were cross-border, and about 200 of those ended up in the Supreme People's Court under this prior review system. So related developments. So because of the Belt and Road, there's a notice on what's called centralized handling of judicial review of arbitration cases. The idea there was to have arbitration related matters in the hands of people with that kind of competency. And then in end 2017, early 2018, the Supreme People's Court issued judicial interpretations, pulling together some of their, a lot of their old notices, et cetera, to have a more comprehensive body of quasi-legislation on judicial review of arbitration. Yeah, so other arbitration-related developments. So this point 3 is quite important for the practitioners. There's an arrangement, which is with Hong Kong, so it's kind of a quasi treaty, but it can't be a treaty because it's with Hong Kong, on arbitration interim measures. That is to say, if a Hong Kong, if like the Hong Kong International Arbitration, if an arbitral tribunal sitting in Hong Kong, let's say in a Hong Kong International Arbitration Commission arbitration, issues an order to, let's say, freeze assets, to make sure that assets are dissipated. So from Hong Kong, that can be enforced in the mainland. So this is it's an interim measure. It's not part of a final award. So Hong Kong, this kind of interim measure can be enforced from Hong Kong on the mainland and vice versa. And there have been about 50 or so, and I think about an even number going both ways. So HKIC, I think, they've done presentations on the way this is going. Other things in these policy documents, there's language about the Supreme Court supporting foreign arbitration institutions to arbitrate in China, because that's not clear under the arbitration law. Let's see, other developments. The China International Commercial Court is doing its part to fill in some of the gaps in the arbitration law. Probably what is not known is this point 6. I have a related photo. The Supreme People's Court is contributing to the amendment of the arbitration law, which is currently in the hands of the Ministry of Justice. But if for those of us who have looked at the commentary by the Ministry of Justice to the draft of the arbitration law that they put out for comment, it says, like, thank you to the Supreme People's Court and the local courts for, meeting with us and providing, providing input to the draft. In these BRI documents, there's stated support for China BRI country joint arbitration institutions. There's one between maybe the Shanghai International Arbitration Commission and South Africa. There's a China African one, but as far as I can see, a lot of the big cases are really with the big institutions, with the, ICC, with HKIAC, Singapore, etc. So the background, so Belt and Road means many more disputes resolved by arbitration. So the Chinese government, as I mentioned, they're promoting China as an international arbitration center, but investment arbitration is an issue. So there's stated policy for the Supreme People's Court to support arbitration in Hong Kong. So I mentioned the Supreme People's Court's support for the amendment of the arbitration law. It's mentioned in the 2020 opinion, and then the Ministry of Justice acknowledged the work of the courts in providing ideas about the amendment of the arbitration law. So next on to the topic of litigation. So the policy documents raise like civil procedure issue, so private or conflict of law issues, and public international issues. So I don't want to avoid the very complicated issues that other people write about and then feel like not my competency. So some of the issues, so China, as I think people know, very protective of its judicial system, that it has the concept judicial sovereignty. So it's a part of its very, it's stressed on its own sovereignty. So treats choice of jurisdiction in a contract and choice of arbitration differently. There's this requirement of actual connection. So therefore, Chinese courts will often accept a case even if it's being litigated abroad. I recommend somebody else's excellent research in this area. And what we notice, there's an expanded scope of disputes that the Chinese courts want to assert their jurisdiction over. So a bit of this is also part of China's more robust foreign policy and the Chinese courts doing their part. Oh, yes. So a bit, yeah. So this is just so you can get a taste of the kind of language that I'm trying to read and analyze. Yeah, so this is on parallel proceedings and assertion of jurisdiction. This is, no, I think this is from the 2020 opinion. Yeah, exercise judicial jurisdiction in accordance with law. So the court shall properly exercise judicial jurisdiction in accordance with Chinese law, effectively upholding national judicial sovereignty and providing timely, effective judicial relief to Chinese and foreign subjects. So you can see the stresses on protecting China's judicial sovereignty. Yeah. So while upholding the judicial jurisdiction of China, they shall properly address the international conflict of foreign related judicial jurisdiction and international parallel proceedings. Yeah, so because we're seeing these cases originally in the maritime area, but now more and more in the area of IP. But I don't want to go too far into this because there's there's other good research on this topic. Okay, so litigation developments. So the opinions flag a new policy that makes enforcement of foreign judgments easier. Because China traditionally had made it very difficult, had policy make it very difficult to enforce foreign judgments unless there was a treaty providing for that. So otherwise, there needed to be reciprocity in enforcement, and kind of the old way was the foreign jurisdiction had to go first. There had to be evidence that a foreign jurisdiction had enforced a Chinese judgment. So now, so with the first Belt and Road interpretation, there was a flag, we're going to make things easier. I understand there's going to be new guidance coming out on this. I don't know whether it be later this year or next year, but I saw this in a report. Yeah, it's issued sometime this year that they're working on guidance in this area. I mean, this has been a long time in coming. So in the area of litigation, so Supreme People's Court judges strengthening the voice of China in formulating international rules. This is kind of a policy in the, it's a party policy or more overall to strengthen China's voice in formulating international legal rules. Yes, so the next slide, you'll see the Supreme People's Court judge participated in the Chinese delegation to the negotiation of the Hague Judgments Convention. Yeah, so China signed the Choice of Courts Convention, of the Hague Choice of Courts Convention that had previously negotiated, but China still hasn't ratified either convention, as Chinese civil procedure law is inconsistent. Yeah, so here's, let's see, so in the first row, the second from the left is Judge Xi Xiangyang, so from the number 4 Civil Division. So he was among so he participated in the drafting of the Hague Convention on the recognition of and enforcement of foreign judgments. So So the contributing Chinese wisdom is a slogan. No, so he participated in the negotiation. Yeah, I think Professor Brand from the University of Pittsburgh, who participated in the U.S. delegation. I mean, I think he'll be able to say, I believe he's writing a book related to the negotiation of the convention, be able to have more to say on this because he was there, not me. Let me see. Yeah, other litigation developments. So the China International Commercial Court, that was established in 2018. It must not have been anticipated in 2015 when that first opinion was issued because it's not mentioned. There have been a lot of scare articles in the press about it. So far, I see it's been gap filling Chinese law, not settling large numbers of Belt and Road disputes. Yeah, and there's an expert committee in it with Chinese and foreigners. Yeah, I can say something later about the expert committee. Yeah, so there are a number of scenarios leading to Chinese courts asserting jurisdiction. Yeah, so setting aside choice of courts clauses, as I mentioned, there's not really a concept of comity, and then there's narrow grounds of foreign non-convenience. Another aspect of litigation, so geographical robust assertion of jurisdiction, you see that especially in the maritime courts. So the Chinese maritime courts would assert jurisdiction over other acts that occur in waters that they consider to be Chinese, even though yeah, and then now we have this related new phenomenon of this anti-suit or anti-suit injunctions in the IP cases, but I'm not going to talk about, this is not my competition, there are seminars on this, so I don't really want to talk about that number 7 very much. Yeah, litigation related developments. So the Supreme People's Court guides developments in this area through what are called guiding cases and model cases and cases that it decides. Another one, a matter, I think I may have mentioned in my blog, but I don't think not known much. So the China, so they're working on smart courts, and they're looking into serving process cross-border electronically. And already been many cases where Chinese courts take evidence electronically, but there's no reciprocity. So if a US litigator wants to take evidence from China, then it has to go through the Hague Evidence Convention procedures, which are long and tedious and so I mean, I guess that's also it's also a pattern where China will so it's protecting its judicial sovereignty by doing this, by sticking to the Hague Service Convention requirements. Let me see, so Supreme Court working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to expand the network of enforcement of judgments and other civil legal assistance treaties. So senior Supreme Court's judges have written about recommended changes to the civil procedure law in concerning foreign related matters, including dropping this actual connection requirement. Yeah, so there there's a bankruptcy pilot with Hong Kong. So that signals more concern about cross-border bankruptcies. And yeah, so I've been, so as in the 2020 opinion, the Supreme Appeals Court is providing input to eventual legislative changes. Yeah, so this is a 2019 conference discussing the amendment of the Maritime Special Procedures Law. Yeah, so going on to mediation. So all these BRI opinions have language about what is called diversified dispute resolution and settling disputes through mediation. The CICC rules promote mediation, and they also have so this one-stop platform linking to leading domestic mediation disputes, and the CICC rules link to these Supreme Appeals Court and the parties' policy on diversified dispute resolution. Let me see. Yeah, so in the areas mediation, so China's signed the Singapore Mediation Convention, and the Supreme Appeals Court was involved the decision of the Chinese government to sign. Yeah, but Chinese mediation legislation is quite out of date, and there's no commercial mediation law yet. Yeah, so this is yours truly in the group. So there's a so this is at the China, the Institute of International Law of the China Academy of Social Sciences. So this was like a closed-door workshop discussing the Singapore Mediation Convention and whether China should sign. There's a woman in the photo from the Supreme Appeals Court. So why am I there? It's I helped, it was partially my idea to actually organize this. The gentleman to my right was a Chinese negotiator of the Singapore Mediation Convention, and he and another gentleman. So I thought it'd be a good idea to get everybody in one room. Yeah, it's Adrian. So it's Adrian Hughes is the guy there at the far left in the first row. So we were both in Beijing for this event sponsored by the China, what is it called? The Great Britain China Center. So now I thought Adrian Hughes, he's a well-known arbitrator and commercial mediator. So I thought it would be good for Adrian to talk about his real life experience mediating commercial cases, because then it wouldn't all be theory. Because he talked about an airport dispute over building an airport in the Caribbean. So I thought it'd be really, really useful. Yeah, so there are many issues in these documents I haven't really talked about. One of those is criminal law, criminal seizure. As I mentioned before, the high-level policy is set above the Supreme Appeals Court. So the 2015 opinion, the courts shall bring the functions and roles of criminal trials into play and create a harmonious and stable environment for the Belt and Road. So it includes this: they shall strengthen the criminal trial work, deepen criminal judicial cooperation with countries along the Belt and Road, severely crack down on violent and terrorist forces, separatist forces, and religious extremist forces. And then there are links in the later documents to Chinese policy on anti-corruption, extradition, etc. So but you can see from this language here that there's a focus on, cracking down and a concern with, terrorism, separatism, and what China views as religious extremism. Okay, so yes, so in this area, so the Supreme People's Court is involved in negotiating related international, multilateral, bilateral conventions, treaties, etc. The Supreme People's Court involved in extradition proceedings to and from China. So they're interested in extraditing persons to China that they, who committed various crimes. There's a recent criminal procedure judicial interpretation with a section on foreign related cases. So this is actually a plus because this is the first time it's been transparent. There's language on trying cases. It means the quality of trying foreign related cases needs improvement. Inconsistency between Chinese legislation and international conventions. Hold on, so there's a lot on soft power. I should probably write this up as a separate article. So there's a lot in these opinions on soft power. So improving the procedure of Chinese law in the courts and providing China's foreign policy goals. Supreme People's Court has signed many memoranda of understanding with foreign courts, some with provisions on judicial training, a lot with exchange of visits. Very hard to find full text on these memoranda. The Supreme People's Court is doing a lot of judicial training of Belt and Road jurisdiction judges, especially Central Asia, Southeast Asia, Pakistan, maybe Bangladesh also, some countries in Eastern Europe. There've been, other also, there's been at least one session with African judges. I've not been able to find the curriculum, but I assume it can't be super, it can't be super deep on Chinese law. But also other ways the Supreme People's Court facilitates soft power. There are large-scale international conferences. So there was recently one in Kunming on, so co-sponsored with the UN environmental program on environmental law. So SPC engages a lot with UN organizations, especially WIPO, but also, now the Standing Forum on International Court, it's not a UN organization. It's established by the UK, by the English Supreme Court, to bring international commercial courts together. So they're translating. Supreme People's Court is doing a lot more translation of their cases, annual reports in English, special reports, and then there's a series of books published by Springer. Some Supreme People's Court, pre-COVID, Supreme People's Court would speak abroad, IP judges in the international commercial area.
Susan, we are starting to get some very interesting questions in the Q&A. So I'm wondering if you want to wrap up or maybe take a break so that we can facilitate some questions.
So I have about 2 or 3 minutes of my crystal ball gaze.
Okay, fine, thanks.
So maybe another 2 minutes.
Sure.
So what can we expect? So their policy goal is to establish a first-class judiciary with international influence that serves the modernization the system of national governance and governance capacity. So a very competent judiciary with an international impact that serves party and state goals. So Chinese courts will be engaging the outside world more robustly, both hard and soft, civil and commercial and criminal. Yeah, so I would say we'll see Supreme Court continuing to participate in Chinese delegations to have a greater impact on international rules, but it's also good to go the other way. Then they can see the subtleties of the rules and figure out how the rules can be implemented in China. I expect more engagement with international institutions and foreign judiciaries, especially in the global South. So, and then on the domestic side, SPC has a big job. It will create appropriate domestic institutions. It will be an important force in creating a body of Chinese legal norms related to interactions with the rest of the world. Whenever the MPC drafts related legislation, they're generally involved. Yes, I think we're likely to see more cross-border cases in the Chinese courts, more Chinese law used abroad. Yes, so SPC will participate in harmonization of Chinese law and practice with the rest of the world, or harmonization. And let me see. So just to say, this is either an introduction or a deep dive for some into how China's party-led Supreme Court works and its impact domestically and abroad. And thank you for the opportunity. Okay, let's stop share, right?
Thank you very much.